Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli wa nusallim ala rasulihil kareem amma ba'd. My most respected elders and brothers, firstly we should thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for allowing us yet another opportunity to witness the Mubarak day of Jumu'ah. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says that any person who makes ghusl on a Friday, he makes a proper ghusl and then he comes early for Jumu'ah, sits close to the minbar. He sits close to the minbar and he listens attentively. Then for every step he takes towards the masjid, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will grant him the reward for fasting for the entire year. Inshallah, the guest speaker, Moulana Mohammed Saloojee, is running slightly late due to unforeseen circumstances. So inshallah, we will just give one or two advices on the coming of Ramadan, and then we will read our sunnah salahs, and after that inshallah Moulana Saleem sahab will come. So as we know, Jumu'ah is right around the corner. One of these days we will all be sitting here and we will be not getting ready for lunch, rather we will be getting ready for iftar tonight. And my dear brothers, as we all know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the day after Eid, meaning on the day after Eid al-Fitr, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala announces to Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells Jannah, "O Jannah, from now till next year Ramadan, I want you to start preparing yourself, start adorning yourself, start getting ready." Why? Because next year Ramadan, there will be a whole lot of people who will seek my forgiveness. There will be a whole lot of people who will turn towards me. There will be a whole lot of people who will do such ibadah that I will want to grant them such a Jannah that has been preparing for one entire year. So my dear brothers, if Jannah itself is preparing for 1 year in order to see us, then how do we have to prepare to see Jannah? Now my dear brothers, we know that there are only a few days left until Ramadan meets us. But we can still start from now. Instead of starting from Ramadan, from the first day of Ramadan, rather let us start from today. So if a person is reading half page of Quran a day, if a person is reading 1 page of Quran a day, then from today, let us try and read 2 pages of Quran. Let us try and read 3 pages of Quran. If a person is making 100 istighfar a day, from today let us start reading 200 istighfar. And the reason for this, my dear brothers, is by the time Ramadan comes, by the time we see Ramadan, we must already be in a momentum. So we don't waste the first few days of Ramadan trying to adjust to the ibadah. It's just like how when we're driving a car, my dear brothers. When we start off with the car, we don't start off immediately speeding. Rather, we have to build up that speed. Some cars take a little quicker. Sometimes cars take a little longer. But eventually, once that speed is completely built up, then the car will be able to run smoothly on the highway. Just like that, my dear brothers, let us build up our speed and momentum of ibadah. So by the time Ramadan comes, we're already flying on the highway through Ramadan. We're already earning the great rewards. My dear brothers, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in a hadith Qudsi. A hadith Qudsi is something that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam narrates, but he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said in a hadith Qudsi that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, يَتْرُكُ طَعَامَهُ وَشَرَابَهُ وَشَهْوَتَهُ مِنْ أَجْلِي. That the person who is fasting, he leaves out his food, he leaves out his drink, he leaves out his desires. As-siyamu li, and he says he fasts solely for me. Now my dear brothers, if we look at this, then any other ibadah that we perform, any other ibadah that we do, whether it is zakat, whether it is charity, whether it is salah, then there is a slight possibility of us performing this ibadah for someone else. For example, we come to the masjid and we want to read our sunnah salahs, and we notice that there's someone there who's close to us. So sometimes shaitan may put it in our hearts, let us read with extra khushu', let us read with extra khudu', extra dedication in the salah. Maybe this person will think, wow, what a pious man. Or maybe we're driving somewhere and we see a beggar comes to the car, and in the passenger seat is a business partner of ours, or in the passenger seat is someone close to us. So we decide, you know what, this person is watching me, let me take out an extra 100 rand. Let me give this person 100 rand. Let me show him what a charitable person I am, what a nice person I am. But fasting, my dear brothers, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, As-siyamu li, fasting is only for me. Because if you look at a person who is fasting, then multiple times during the day, a person will have that opportunity to go in the bathroom to drink a little bit of water, especially if it's a hot day. Or maybe that person is going to be alone half an hour, 45 minutes before iftar, and he thinks to himself, no one is going to see me, let me just eat 1-2 khajoors, I'm feeling very, very weak. But my dear brothers, this person, he adheres to the fasting from suhoor right until iftar. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَنَا أَجْزِي بِهِ, and I myself, personally, I will reward that person. Meaning that for every other ibadah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has a stipulation with regards to what He gives the person. But for fasting, every person's fasting will be different. Some person's fasting will be pure. Some person's fasting might have a little bit of riba, a little bit of backbiting in it. Some person's fasting might have a little bit of tarnish, a little bit of other sins in it. But my dear brothers, if we fast solely for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not just staying away from food and drink, but rather also staying away from sins, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself will come on the day of Qiyamah, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will call you and say, oh, so and so, come forth. This is the reward, this is the jaza that I am giving you for this Ramadan's fasting. Why? Because this Ramadan, you behaved yourself. You were extremely well behaved. You obeyed the commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. You followed the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. You actually made an effort and you stayed away from as many sins as possible during this Ramadan. Here is your reward. And my dear brothers, we will be extremely baffled by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will give us, inshallah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further goes on to say in this hadith al-Qudsi, وَالْحَسَنَةُ بِعَشْرِ أَمْثَالِهَا, and one reward in the month of Ramadan is worth 10 rewards. Meaning that if a person, for example, if a person reads Quran, normally for every letter he gets 10 rewards. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in the hadith that a person who reads Alif, Lam, Mim, he won't get 10 rewards, but rather because there are 3 different letters, he will get 30 rewards. So my dear brothers, in the month of Ramadan, just by saying Alif, Lam, Mim, the person will get 300 rewards. And my dear brothers, unfortunately as human beings, we are unable to comprehend what 30 rewards mean. For every person, reward will be different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the greatest, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being the most rewarding, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's 300 rewards or 30 rewards will be very, very great. And inshallah, my dear brothers, there are 2 things we should start to try and do from now for Ramadan. The first thing we should do, my dear brothers, is we should start our ibadah from now. So instead of waiting for later, instead of waiting for Ramadan to start, instead of waiting for the first Taraweeh, let us try from now. Let us sit and read a little bit extra of what we're supposed to be reading. And the second thing we should do, my dear brothers, is we should try and stay away from sins from now. So instead of waiting for Ramadan to say, no, I will give up this sin in Ramadan, I will cover the TV in Ramadan, I will stop listening to music in Ramadan, I will lower my gaze in Ramadan, let us start from now. So by the time Ramadan comes, we already are in that vibe, we are already in that momentum, and inshallah we can stay away from sins. My dear brothers, we are just going to read our sunnah now, and then inshallah Moulana Saleem Sahib will come and Moulana Saleem Sahib will continue. Jazakallah ahsan al-jazaa.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله الكريم الحمد لله حمدا كثيرا طيبا مباركا فيه جزا الله عنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم بما هو أهله. بعد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أنزلناه في ليلة القدر صدق الله العظيم. We begin in the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most kind, the most merciful. And surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most forgiving, and surely Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most loving. We greet you with the most noblest of greetings, the greetings of Jannah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have surely entered the season of change. Rajab, Sha'ban, and surely the month of Ramadan, these months are there for us to have introspection, for us to have reflection, and ultimately change our lives. As much as these months are there for us to increase our ibadah. It is also, these months are here for us to introspect within ourselves, to reflect and change not only our habits but also our hearts. To change our hearts is of utmost importance. Ibn Abbas radiallahu anh used to say that Sahaba radiallahu anh used to welcome the month of Ramadan with introspection, reflection, and cleansing out their hearts. And that's the topic of today's discussion. Welcoming the month of Ramadan by cleansing out our hearts. We'll be very hard pressed to find a community, a society, a family without any conflict, without any animosity. If we look around us, within our own homes, within our own masajid, within our own communities, we are continuously plagued by conflict, animosity with one another. And this is no small thing. This is no small thing. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Yadullahi ala jama'a. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's assistance is with those who are together. If we are not together, if we continuously living in conflict with one another, we are depriving ourselves of the assistance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So yes, ibadah is an important aspect, and we can't undermine it. But the aspect of bringing us together is also of high importance, especially as we enter these great months, enter the great month of Ramadan. Ponder over this. Ibn Kathir mentions, on the authority of Ibn Kathir, he says, under this ayah, إِنَّا أَنزَلْنَاهُ فِي لَيْلَةِ الْقَدْرِ. Ibn Kathir says that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was about to step out and give the ummah the exact date and the exact night of Laylatul Qadr. In the interim, two men have a conflict and they begin to argue. And this most valuable information is taken away from this ummah. Yes, there's numerous wisdoms behind it. But the exact night of Laylatul Qadr is taken away. This most valuable information. Why? Because of two men arguing. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says in another hadith that on Mondays and Thursdays, the doors of Jannah are flung open. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that forgive all those that believe in me. Except suspend the forgiveness of those who have conflict with one another. Suspend their forgiveness until they reconcile. Another hadith, and I want you to understand the context of this narration. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is in Arafah, great place. He's about to lift his hands and make dua. But before he makes dua, he says, is there anyone in the gathering that has broken off family ties or has a conflict with someone? There was a man in the gathering who had an altercation with his khala, his auntie. Immediately he gets up, he goes to his khala, he reconciles and he comes back. But as I said, the context of this narration. Who's making the dua? The greatest human to step on earth. The most pious of people. The most beloved of Allah. He's in Arafah. But he himself, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, fears that his dua will lack potency if there's someone in the gathering who has broken off family ties or has had a conflict with someone. He himself fears. We continuously ask, why our du'as are not being readily accepted? One of the reasons is because of our continuously conflict, fighting with one another. We are not naive. We are not naive. conflict must happen. Altercations will happen. This is this is the way that the nature of people. So conflict will happen. But it's how we resolve the conflict. And if we are willing to resolve the conflict. Ulama will tell you, if you want to measure your spirituality, yes, ibadah is one barometer on measuring spirituality. But another barometer on how to measure your spirituality is how you deal with conflict. Do you have the cleanliness of heart? Do you have the mature shoulders? Do you have the broad shoulders and emotional maturity and the spiritual awareness to deal with conflict? And this is where Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam is a master. Sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He is a master. The way he dealt with conflict was mesmerizing. Mesmerizing. It was amongst his legacies. Once Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam is sitting with his noble companion Anas bin Malik radiyallahu anhu. They're sitting in the home of Aisha radiyallahu anha. Obviously Aisha radiyallahu anha is doing her bit and she's preparing meals. So as they're waiting for meals to be prepared, the other consort, the noble wife, the other wife of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, Salma radiyallahu anha, sends over a platter of food. The platter is presented to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to Anas, let us partake, and they partake. Now, you can do the maths. Aisha radiyallahu anha is doing her bit in preparing meals for her guest, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam and Anas radiyallahu anhu. And now she comes out and she sees the plate of Salma radiyallahu anha. She loses it. Emotion overtakes her. She's a woman. Emotion grips her. She takes the platter of Salma radiyallahu anha and she throws it onto the floor, and the platter is shattered into pieces. Moment of conflict. Now look at Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to Anas, mind your mom Aisha. Emotion has gripped her. It has overtaken her. He sallallahu alayhi wasallam goes onto the floor with his own Mubarak hands. He cleans the platter. And look at this. He then stands up and he gently caresses her and he says, Ya Uwaish. Uwaish is a term of endearment, like how you say honey, darling, whatever it may be. It's a term of endearment. He turns a moment of conflict into a moment of romance. This was he, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This was him. Moment of conflict in front of his guest. But look how he turns the situation. And Aisha radiyallahu anha will remember this moment as one of the most loving moments in her life with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walks into the home. Conflict must happen. It happened to the greatest amongst us, in the greatest of homes, the homes of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But as we said, it's how they rose. It's how Sahaba radiyallahu anhu rose above the conflict. Their spirituality was a true barometer. The way they dealt with conflict was a true barometer of their great spirituality. They understood what was important. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walks into the home of Fatima radiyallahu anha, his noble daughter. And he walks in and inquires, where is Ali, her husband? Ali radiyallahu anha. And she says to her father, me and Ali had an altercation, we had an argument, and he's left the home. He's gone to the masjid. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam immediately leaves the home of his daughter. He comes into Masjid al-Nabawi. And he finds Ali radiyallahu anhu laying in the dust. Now look at him. He doesn't go to Ali and say, do you know why you're troubling my daughter? She's the queen of... He immediately breaks the ice, uses some humor. And he says, Qum ya Aba Turab. Get up, you dusty man. Get up, you dusty fella. He breaks the ice. And Ali radhiyallahu anhu stands up and he's smiling to see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And this term of Ya Aba Turab became so beloved to Ali radhiyallahu anhu because he remembered of how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said it to him with a gleaming smile. And Ali radiallahu anhu stands up and hand in hand, Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam takes him to the home of Fatima radiallahu anha. He sits them down and he unites them. He walks out of the home and he's walking in the streets of Medina sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and he's gleaming and he's glowing. And Sahaba radiallahu anhu ask, "Oh Nabi of Allah, why are you so happy? Why are you so happy?" He says, "Why shouldn't I be happy? When I've united the two people I love the most." This is his legacy. That is his legacy, to bring people together. To bring people together. And that's why sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in a hadith, better than all nafil ibadah, better after your fara'id, the best thing you can do is to bring and reconcile one another. And this is his legacy. So as we were saying, that Sahaba rose above the conflict. And this is an important thing regarding us as men, to have and to rise above conflict. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made us more emotionally mature, or supposedly supposed to be more emotionally mature than women. But we've lost that somewhere along the line. How often we hear in our communities of men issuing 3 talaqs. An entire home is broken because you couldn't control your anger, you didn't have the emotional maturity. That is why Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, a strong man is not one who beats another man in wrestling, but a strong man is one who controls his anger at the time of anger. It's high time that we become real Muslim men in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And as Ali radiallahu anhu puts it so beautifully, and he says, a moment of patience in a moment of anger saves you from 1,000 moments of regret. How often in moments of anger we say the most hurtful things to those we love the most, and we regret it for the rest of our lives. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam was sitting with Anas radiallahu anhu, and he said to him, Anas, oh my boy, oh my son, do me one favor. Do me one favor. Cleanse your heart and remove animosity and hatred for everyone. Cleanse your heart and remove animosity and hatred for everyone. This is my legacy. This is my sunnah, oh my boy. And whoever holds on to my sunnah will be with me in Jannah. I want you to listen to this hadith. And this is a hadith from Abu Dawood. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I guarantee a house or a palace in Jannah for one who leaves an argument even though he is right. I'll say that again. I guarantee, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, I guarantee, ana za'imun, I guarantee, I put my head on the block for the person who leaves an argument, who leaves a fight, even though he is right. I guarantee him a palace in Jannah. How much do we want Jannah? And that's the difference. That's a major difference between this ummah and the ummah of the past, of Sahaba. They want, Jannah was real for them. They had so much faith, Jannah was real for them. It meant something to them. Once there's a narration in the seerah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And it's about an orphan boy who inherited a piece of land from his parents. And to secure the property that his parents have left for him, he needed to build a wall around the property. But his neighbor had this huge tree, somewhere on the where he needed to build a wall. So he went to the neighbor and asked the neighbor, can you sell me the tree? The neighbor said no. Can we cut off the tree? The neighbor said no. Can we build around the tree? The neighbor said no. So this orphan boy had nowhere else to go but except to the fatherly figure and that is Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he explained this entire story to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and asked him to help him resolve this conflict. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam calls the neighbor and tells him, sell us your tree, sell me your tree. The man says no. Can we build around it? The man says no. He says, can we cut off the tree? The man is stubborn, says no. Then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to him, if you sell me the tree, I guarantee you a tree in Jannah. The man still says no. And he leaves the gathering of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And he's walking in the streets of Medina. Abu Dahda radiallahu anhu overheard this conversation between the neighbor and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Abu Dahda radiallahu anhu runs and he meets the man in the middle of Medina. And he says to the man, do you know who I am? He says, you are Abu Dahda. What do you know about me? You Abu Dahda, you have an orchard with 600 trees. You're known for your sweet water that runs through your orchard. You have a beautiful home. Then Abu Dahda says to him, sell me your tree. Name your price. The man says to him, the neighbor says to him, that I didn't sell it to Rasulullah. What makes you think that I will sell it to you? Abu Dahda radiallahu anhu says to him, I will give you my entire orchard, my home. Whatever I have in the orchard is yours for your one tree. The man says, are you crazy? Are you crazy? Oh, people of Medina, Abu Dahda has lost his mind. He's selling his entire orchard to me for one tree. Deal done. Abu Dahda runs home. He runs and he screams to Dahda that we have struck a great bargain. My beloved, we have struck a great bargain. She comes out, what is the bargain? We have bought a tree in Jannah for our entire orchard. She herself rejoices. She says to her kids, remove the dates from your pockets. For surely your father has made a great bargain. And she and Abu Dahda and the family leave the orchard. And he goes to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam and says to Nabi of Allah, is the deal for one tree in Jannah? If I get that tree, will I get the one tree in Jannah? Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam said, surely. He says, oh Nabi of Allah, the tree is yours. The tree is yours. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam says to Abu Dahda, I don't see one tree of yours, I see thousands of trees for you, O Abu Dahda. Jannah was real for them. How much do you want Jannah? How much do you want Jannah? How much do you need your du'as to be accepted? How much do you need your ibadah to accept it? This is the question I ask today. How much do you want it? I say to you, leave your conflict, leave your arguments, unite and you will have Jannah. On the guarantee of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Leave your conflict, leave your animosity, leave your altercations, and your du'as will be accepted. On the nights of Laylatul Qadr, when thousands of angels descend, and Allah's mercy is descending, and Allah's rahmah is raining, who is deprived on this night? Those that harbor ill for one another and those that are fighting with one another are exempted and they are suspended from the mercy of Allah even on this night. Great nights beckon. Great days await us. How long are we going to stay in our slumber? We can go on talking about the unity of the Middle East and the Arab leaders. We can go on talking about all of that. But ummah building begins within our homes. Within our homes, within our masajid, within our communities. It's naive to make dua that the Arab leaders unite against Zionist Israel, but we ourselves haven't brought our families together. That's naivety and hypocritical. Ummah building begins with us. This ummah is going through so much of pain, so much of pain. It's high time we realize our responsibility and leave our pettiness aside. In short, For the light of Ramadan to enter our hearts, we need to remove the darkness from it. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين نستغفر الله ونتوب إليه.
محمد رسول الله. حي على الصلاة، حي على الصلاة، حي على الفلاح، حي على الفلاح. قد قامت الصلاة، قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر، الله أكبر، لا إله إلا الله.
الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. سبح اسم ربك الأعلى الذي خلق فسوى والذي قدر فهدى والذي أخرج المرعى فجعله غثاء أحوى سنقرئك فلا تنسى إلا ما شاء الله إنه يعلم الجهر وما يخفى ونيسرك لليسرى فذكر إن نفعت الذكرى سيذكر من يخشى ويتجنبها الأشقى الذي يصلى النار الكبرى ثم لا يموت فيها ولا يحيا قد أفلح من تزكى وذكر اسم ربه فصلى بل تؤثرون الحياة الدنيا والآخرة خير وأبقى إن هذا لفي الصحف الأولى صحف إبراهيم وموسى. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. هل أتاك حديث الغاشية وجوه يومئذ خاشعة عاملة ناصبة تصلى نارا حامية تسقى من عين آنية ليس لهم طعام إلا من ضريع لا يسمن ولا يغني من جوع وجوه يومئذ ناعمة لسعيها راضية في جنة عالية لا تسمع فيها لاغية فيها عين جارية فيها سرر مرفوعة وأكواب موضوعة ونمارق مسفوفة وزرابي مبثوثة أفلا ينظرون إلى الإبل كيف خلقت وإلى السماء كيف رفعت وإلى الجبال كيف نصبت وإلى الأرض كيف سطحت فذكر إنما أنت مذكر لست عليهم بمسيطر إلا من تولى وكفر فيعذبه الله العذاب الأكبر إن إلينا إيابهم ثم إن علينا حسابهم. الله أكبر. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. الله أكبر. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. اللهم أنت السلام ومنك السلام تبارك ربنا وتعالى.